Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, well, we got a lot to cover tonight. We'll talk about the Saints. We'll talk about LSU, Tulane. We'll try to get to all the state schools, at least a little glimpse of the state schools in terms of their football seasons coming up. We'll talk about dome renovations, which were announced by Governor John Bel Edwards and the Saints on Monday. And then we'll dive into a little bit of the Pelican schedule, which was announced on Monday as well. Have a great guest list for you tonight. From CrestCitySports.com, both these gentlemen, again, returning to our program, one of our favorite guests, Jude Young, joins us along with Rene, Nadeau. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. And as always, I'd like to start off letting folks know a little bit about what you guys are involved in. Run it down for us there, Jude.
Well, it's preseason for us, too. That means it's almost go time, and football season will have us extra busy. At CrescentCitySports.com, we'll have live game broadcasts. We already have previews of dozens of teams from around the state on the high school level. And, of course, we're covering the preseason for LSU and Tulane with the help of the gentleman on my left, I might add, and the Saints and the Pelicans coming up, both deserving of even extra special attention, with the Saints so close and the Pelicans rebuilding and maybe even reloading for a more enjoyable franchise to watch. So plenty to follow at CrescentCitySports.com. I also do a radio show, but you can follow my Twitter account at Jude Young. Big changes coming there that we'll be excited to announce with my CCS partner, Ken Trahan, and I'm also the voice of the UNO Privateers. Another season coming up in just a couple of months. Basketball season will be fully upon us before you know it, with football right around the corner. You
better believe when that announcement is made on the radio side, we'll have Jude back to tell you all about it as well. Rene, welcome back. This is your busy time's about to really kick in now, isn't it?
Well, you know, it is never, I tell people all the time, there's never a slow period in sports or football. I mean, football just goes from one phase to the other. But college football, I love college football. I'll be doing some TV broadcasts this year. Work for CBS Radio for any Saints broadcast, in-game reports, some Pelican stuff, and college football as well. And CrescentCitySports.com, a lot of college football, some recruiting, and I've been covering the Saints a lot. Been out of Saints camp a lot, so I've been turning a lot of things. But you know, I like to come up with a few little different wrinkles now and again, and I just turned in, which will be on CrescentCitySports.com every year about this time, and Jude knows this. I'll turn in the guys who are playing on NFL rosters who prepped in the New Orleans area and where they went to high school and stuff like that. And I added another wrinkle to this year by adding the schools. Some of the top schools have produced the most talent throughout the course of their history.
Yes. So
it's interesting reading.
Yeah, I love that read. Yeah, that's always a great read. And you always tell us a little bit about it, and we'll talk about that as well. Let's talk first of all about the preseason game and what kind of stood out, what didn't stand out. It was preseason game number one. It's vanilla. It is what it is. But it was a real, obviously it is a opportunity for those that are on the bubble, that those are trying to be able to make this team, to be able to impress the coaches, to show what they've learned in the classroom, what they've done on the practice field. Can they take that under the lights for a real game Your thoughts?
Well, from what we saw, you can't take that much out of the defensive performance. I think folks might have been worried, but if they'd have paid attention to scores around the league in the first full week one of the preseason, they were higher scoring than usual. If you follow over-unders, for example, you could see a lot of the games did go over. Usually you see the defenses dominate early on as the offense is looking to catch up, but as the years go on, we see the NFL is more and more slanted towards the advantage to the offense. And if defenses have anything that they can add into the wrinkles of the scheme to be able to give the offense problems, they certainly don't want to show that in preseason games. So you'll see much more vanilla defense, except maybe for that second to last preseason game coming up. So when we watch Saints and Vikings, you were looking at some individual position battles. You know that there's depth at wide receiver, but there are plenty of spots that are up for grabs at this point. The offensive line, Eric McCoy, a big topic of conversation, the second-round rookie. He looks like he's going to be the starter, and he looked pretty good in his first dress rehearsal. So that'll be something something fans will continue to watch throughout the preseason as well. And on the defensive side of the ball, lots of competition in the secondary. You can judge matchups there, who's making plays and who's having problems on the back end, because we know Dennis Allen, as a defensive coordinator, likes to use a lot of different packages and wants to see how versatile guys are. So you'll see some of that during the preseason, and maybe even guys playing different positions that they might not be suited for in the regular season. So if you wonder, why Patrick Robinson is covering outside receivers when he was signed to be a slot receiver, can he fill in a pinch? He gets a little bit of work there against receivers he doesn't see every day in practice. That's just one example that I noticed from the game. So anyway, just try to pay attention more to the position battles. You don't get too much out of it versus what I believe, and I said this on your show, that coaches get from the day-to-day practices. And the most valuable reps probably all preseason are this week, and what's going on with the Saints and Chargers matching up in those practices. There's so much more situational football that can be looked at. Enjoy the preseason games for what they are, because a guy may play well in the preseason and not get it done day in and day out at practice, and therefore not make the roster.
Yeah, no doubt. For you, you've seen almost every single practice. So much like a coach, you're able to see what you've done, what you've taken from practice, and then kind of look at the game and kind of put those together.
Yeah, and one thing on CrescentCitySports.com, I have a story on the running backs. I had a chance to talk with Joe Thomas, and he gave a thumbnail on the running back prospects and what they do well and things like that. That's one position that bears watching. A guy who, the fans are watching, Devine Ezigbo is a guy who could be that Kyrie Robinson or Pierre Thomas kind of undrafted free agent kind of guy. He does a lot of things well. He's learned the system, put a lot of work. There's going to be some tough cuts at wide receiver, defensive back. Yeah. I think adding Chris Clark yesterday as a tackle, I think he may be, if he's up to where he was last year, he started 13 games for Carolina. He may be the answer to that tackle, that swing tackle guy. They hoping he is. He's a native New Orleanian. He's 31, 32, 33 years old. It's going to be some tough cuts. You're going to have guys being cut from this team that are going to be regular starters or players for other teams. Yeah. I think it's that deep. I'm a little concerned about the depth at linebacker. There's a big drop-off after the first 3 or 4 guys. Craig Robertson is a guy who can swing, Demario Davis, Anzalone, and A.J. Klein. But after that, it's a drop-off. And I think that the Saints are going to really check the waiver wire and maybe bring another player or two into that, because you have some suspects and some prospects in there at linebacker. But I don't know if anybody really jumps off the table. And I think they really need to address that because of any injuries or just to kind of solidify that linebacker position. I still think they're going to bring some people in. The defensive line, Sheldon Rankins is going to be out. Onyemata will be out for the first game. I still think they're going to bring a player or two in there before this camp is completed and take a look-see as the cuts begin to take place for other teams and maybe take a look-see at how they can upgrade this team.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because that's kind of where I want to go. You look at the running back and the tackle position, there's been a revolving door here. Trying to find that swing tackle. They are stacked on the inside with guard and center. Matter of fact, again, I know a lot of people here in the city want to hope that Will Clapp makes this team. When you talk about him, Cameron Tom, McCoy, you're hoping that obviously they can all stick here. Tackle is a position where they're searching for that third tackle. You heard Rene just speak about it. Running back as well. Zigbo obviously is a guy that is a prospect. Jacquizz Rodgers just came in. To me, I think Washington is the third running back here. Take those two positions, your thoughts, and then we'll hand it off to Rene and get his thoughts.
Well, I think it's more critical in the Saints' eyes because we've seen the movement on the offensive line to be able to find that tackle, and particularly if they can find somebody who can step in a pinch and play left tackle. Clark may be the guy based on his ability to perform at least at an average level last year for Carolina. He's 33 years old, but you're hoping you're not asking him to play a lot of games. But why is it so critical? Well, we know the durability of Teron Armstead or lack thereof. We haven't seen him play 16 fully healthy games yet. And we know Andrus Peat can move outside the left tackle and play. But you have to feel like his career development, having to swing out there so much, has probably hurt him into being the best guard he can be. And he's had his nicks as well. So both of them have durability issues. You don't want to have a shakeup of multiple guys having to move and play different positions just because one goes down. And assuming Armstead does go down, there's a real chance for Clark to make the team because I don't think they have anybody else in camp right now that they feel comfortable with sticking out at left tackle, coming in even for a game, much less starting.
Newhouse, Ola, I mean, they just haven't really kind of stuck out at this point.
Right, so they're going to continue to look, but you wonder because interesting thing that we've seen in the last couple of years in the NFL is the fact that there aren't two cut downs anymore.
Right.
There is just one at the end of the preseason game, and that hurts situations like the Saints who are looking for that guy who can be a veteran who doesn't make it, whether it's because of money or a draft pick stepping up. So it might be the Saints find their answer in the end after the final cuts, after they set their initial 53. But at least Clark's somebody who started in the NFL, played for 5 different teams, started something like 66 games. So he's somebody that you're going to watch pretty closely here in the rest of the preseason.
And running back, would you agree on running back?
I think it's almost certain if nobody's hurt that you're going to carry 3 like they did last year with Washington being the third and the fullback Zach Line. But the questions are, how many guys can you get a look at to see that you might have to be able to pick up if there is an injury? You know, Azigba, I'm not surprised that he got a little bit of action late in the game. Maybe he'll see more as the preseason goes along. But if he's too good, you might have to carry him in the regular season because a lot of people thought he was a real find from the moment he was signed as an undrafted free agent. He's a really nice insurance policy if he can continue to feel comfortable learning the offense. Can he pass block? Can he handle the little things that are important and being an all-around running back? Because we don't know about Latavius Murray and his ability based on what the Saints are going to ask him to do, including clearly catch more passes because we saw that against Minnesota. Will he be able to hold up when you look for the increased workload for an offense that's one of the top 5 in the league in running the football versus the pass? Now, it's been a total change. The offense is still explosive and still productive and one of the best in the league, but it's because they're so balanced. They're going to ask not only Kamara, but Murray to handle the football a lot, and those guys have to stay healthy, and if they aren't, you got to have answers for both of those skill sets behind them.
Piggyback on what he said.
You know, Azigbo, I would say I would be shocked to see him carry the ball in the season. If he can play special teams well, and that's what their decision is going to be, if he can contribute on special teams, he does have a shot. If he does well in the preseason as a ball carrier, and he does what they want him to do in special teams, then he could solidify a spot based on how good, if they try to put him on a practice squad, he won't get through. And if he contributes on special teams, they feel like he is a really contributor there, he may earn a spot. As far as the offensive line is concerned, because of the frailty of Teron Armstead, you may have to carry 9. And what I mean by that is Andrus Peat, he's the natural, he has been a natural to swing outside. Now, Chris Clark could be a tackle too, but you don't know how the injuries, and somebody's going to get hurt somewhere. It may be a nick or a bump or whatever. But Chris Clark could play tackle. Andrus Peat can also swing in the tackle. And if you do, it's going to help that decision between Nick Easton and Will Clapp with carrying an extra guard. You know, if you got the starters with Andrus Peat and Warford, if Andrus Peat is going to be a swing tackle, so to speak, it helps the decision to keep a Will Clapp and a Nick Easton. I think that you know, Cam Tom is pretty solid as a backup, and they know they cannot get him through and hide him or anything like that.
I don't think they could get Will Clapp through as well.
No, they would not. He's going to get scooped up.
Right.
If they try to hit him on a practice squad, he's not going to pass. He's going to get in there. And also, I think the salary may play into this. I don't know how much of that is Nick Easton's initial salary is guaranteed.
Right. Because it's a series of one-year deals.
It is,
with him.
and so I mean, let's just say he's got $4 million. I don't know how much of that is going to be guaranteed. Will Clapp's going to make in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $700,000. So if they're pretty even, Steven, Do you go with the youth and you go with your
Right.
draft choice and less money? I'm just saying, if Easton is that much better, okay. But if they're close, that money may play a role into that.
And it really goes back to the number of roster spots that they want to allocate to offensive line. And if they feel like Nick Easton is worth the money because he can fill in at either guard spot and center, that allows them to carry players at other positions where they can just carry the best 53. So that is interesting, and that puts guys like Tom, and I think particularly Clapp, because you would assume Tom is ahead of Clapp in the pecking order at this point, and they feel more comfortable with him as a center. So that's going to make it more difficult there, and like you guys said, it's going to be difficult to be able to release these guys and put them on the practice squad because you have enough depth there. People know that. And I just wanted to say back on Zigbo, I just envision him being somebody that winds up on the practice squad and sticks around as a developmental insurance policy. You think they want to have somebody in the building that if Murray gets hurt, can they activate this guy and he get in there and help you pound out games late and be a short yardage guy at the very least as a rookie, because the 230-pound skill set he brings is far different than Washington and obviously Kamara, who can do it all, but do you want him to do it all? Probably not.
And with a premium offensive lineman, you don't want to let good offensive linemen go.
Yeah.
I mean, again, that's the issue. No matter if you've got a log jam of guys that can play inside or not, because those guys can swing from guard or center. Got to ask you, Rene, about the wide receiver position. Kirkwood, Smith, Butler, Cobbs, Grayson, guys that right now are vying for those last few spots. Who stuck out to you in practice? What do you like what you've seen so far after game one?
Emmanuel Butler, he was hot. He kind of cooled off, made some nice catches yesterday. Kind of reached out, kind of extended himself, and made a nice grab yesterday, parallel with the ground. Simi Cobbs, from what I've seen, he's kind of been up hot and cold. There was a time, I think, because of his size, and he had a little experience being in the league with the Redskins, but I think he's kind of fallen back. Cyril Grayson has kind of elevated his game a little bit. Keith Kirkwood has been out. He's been hurt a little bit. Traquan Smith, I think he's certainly been a draft choice last year.
How about Austin Carr? Because again,
I think
you like Carr.
I do like Austin Carr. Yeah, and he's a guy that's kind of risen from the ashes, and nobody gave him much chance.
I certainly did.
I think he looks like he's really a very sharp guy. He's a Northwestern guy.
Yeah, you like his route running?
Yeah, he runs good routes. He looks like, and we don't know this, how he can maybe deviate a little bit, change his route a little bit, and depending what the defense gives him, may change a route or whatever. And he's on the same page with Drew Brees. He makes some nice catches. I don't see him making any circus catches, but he's a solid guy. He's a guy that whenever he's on the field, you're going to get his best. And he's a guy that looks like he's an effort guy, which, and Sean Payton puts a premium on blocking. Yeah. He looks like a guy that will give you everything he has, and whatever he needs to do to be on the field, Austin Carr is a guy. He's going to be really tough to let go if it comes to him. That's going to be a tough cut.
The wide receiver position is always interesting with the Saints because if Sean Payton were to put out a dating profile based on receivers, he clearly has a type. I'd like him to be about 6'3", 6'4", about 220
Brees
pounds.
loves big receivers.
Right, and it really fits what Brees needs at this point in his career, being more of a short and intermediate passer, and they have a bunch of those guys. Everybody's raving about Butler, and you just wonder, Northern Arizona, smaller college guy, are they going to be able to trust him in the regular season? They might, because look who else is there. Traquan Smith is somebody who's been inconsistent. He dropped off in his rookie year, so he doesn't have a leg up necessarily on any of those guys. And again, only 1 year under his belt. So, hey, Butler could be a guy who plays significant snaps. When you look at the receiver position, you know Ted Ginn is really the only burner on the roster. Al Dupuy wrote about that this week on Crescent City Sports. Cyril Grayson is at this point, and Sean Payton emphasizes that everybody asks about him because he's a local product. Long way to go. So it's hard to imagine him being there as anything more to maybe develop
But
people
I sure
around.
would love to see him with, and I mentioned this to both you guys on the radio show, I'd love to see him with a year under Curtis Johnson.
Right.
Okay, just to let him coach and develop him. Because of the raw speed, and he looks like he's got the ability to catch the ball.
Former track guy, didn't play college football, was a track star at LSU, so he's got a long way to go, and other teams that have seen him before have liked what they've seen and kept him around for a while, but didn't have the patience to develop him. Maybe this is the stop where he gets that opportunity, because he brings something to the table other than any other receiver than Ginn that's on the roster right now. So that may be his chance. Maybe he makes it as a developmental return guy. Deontay Harris is in competition with him for that, assuming Marcus Sherrills is going to be the return man as expected going into the regular season. But it's still wide open as to who's going to get those snaps. If Kirkwood gets himself back healthy, the fact that he was able to take advantage of his opportunity last year and play well and make key catches even in the playoffs, that familiarity, that comfort level may be a benefit to him. But you sort of guess right now the Saints may carry 5 receivers. After Ginn and Thomas, it's really wide open. You'd have to think that Traquan Smith is going to stick around for sure. But there's 2 spots there it could go to anybody, and either of those guys, including Austin Carr, who brings that different skill set altogether and that different build, any of those guys could make it and play a lot and maybe play the 3rd most snaps at the position. It wouldn't be surprising.
You mentioned Harris and Grayson and Sherrills at the return game. Guys, Harris, his size, he's diminutive. He sees the field very well. You saw it in terms of his cuts, that blazing speed. And we haven't, Sherrills is a guy that's a veteran. Okay, that's why they brought him in. Is there a competition there? And then Rene, I'd like you to take the same question.
It's hard to think that there is, only because part of what Sherrills brings to the table, other than 9 years of experience, is the fact that in a pinch he can play in the secondary for you. He's a cornerback who can fill in if there are injuries. Talking about you have to keep that kick returner active. He's one of the 45 out of the 53 on game days. That's an advantage versus, do they trust Harris at all to play receiver? Are they going to ask him? Have they asked him to be a gunner on special teams, and how has he shown out there? Those are the little things that are going to make the difference when you talk about the last roster spot. And you've got a known commodity in the Minnesota Viking, and they're trying to win a Super Bowl. So it's hard to take risks at a position like that, because Sean Payton made 3 coaching changes on special teams. He wanted further improvements, and that includes a more explosive return game and a consistent one, because a little bit of field position goes a long way over the course of the season. So you have to think they're going to stick with the veteran, but that doesn't mean, again, practice spots. There's 10 available. Harris could be one of those guys.
Your thoughts?
Any position, you look at wide receiver, linebacker, running back, those last spot or so at any position has to be a special teams guy. They got to, and a Seal Grayson or a Kirkwood or Austin Carr.
Sure.
I mean, if they're a good receiver, if you're not in the top 3, you're going to have to contribute on special teams. And how good do you do in special teams? And the name we keep forgetting about that he can play wide receiver and running back is Taysom Hill. And he's going to take a spot. So if they had 4 wide receivers, you got Taysom Hill that could line up there if he had to. Now, he wouldn't be a starter, but I mean, he's good enough to do what he needs to do. So having a guy like that on the field, on a team, and fill so many roles, and he could be a running back. I mean, he could be a running back. So that certainly is a bonus to have somebody like that, because it gives you a mulligan. You can maybe let somebody go, and when you got him, if you really get in a pinch, do somewhere else.
And just quickly, because we're going to run out of time in this first segment here. I thought Teddy Bridgewater played really, really well and proved that he could run this offense if necessary. I thought Taysom Hill, even though I'm not on the Taysom train, everybody knows that. I don't think he'll be a starting quarterback in the NFL. But I think he's progressed from last year to this year. I think we've seen a progression with him as a quarterback. Okay, Rene, why don't we take you first? What are your thoughts? And then we'll go to Jude on that as well.
He's made some baby steps. I don't know if he's made a big step, but he's made some baby steps. I think he feels more comfortable. Is he throwing the ball any better? I see him at practice. He does make some good throws at practice. You can't judge by what he did against the Vikings last week. But he still has that mentality. He makes quick decisions. I'll give him that. When
he's
he comes
a one-read
down,
quarterback.
oh man, I tell you, he will not hold the ball too long. He's going to take off. As soon as he sees something, and I guess to be a quarterback, you got to be a little more patient. And I don't know if he's ever going to be patient enough to maybe go to a second or third receiver. I think once that first receiver's gone, maybe the second, maybe he's gone. He's going to take off. He's going to make sure he's going to get that 5, 6, 7 yards. But Teddy Bridgewater, I think this is the reason why he came back with the Saints and passed the opportunity with the Dolphins, because I think he feels comfortable in this offense, and he feels that in the very near future, he's going to be the starting quarterback here.
Right. When you look at those two guys, there's a difference between being an athlete playing quarterback and a quarterback who's athletic. The first one is Taysom Hill, and again, he may be making baby steps, but it's hard to ever project him being a starting quarterback in the NFL. But he fills so many other different needs and wants for Sean Payton and what he does offensively. And then Bridgewater, like you said, he looked comfortable in the offense. We tend to forget that he was acquired late in the preseason last year, so now he's had an entire offseason to get comfortable, and he looks comfortable. I thought there were times against the Vikings that he held the ball a little bit too long, and that could be because of miscommunication, and he's trying to be somebody who protects the football. That's going to be so important in his role if he's ever asked to play this year. First and foremost, protect the football, get comfortable, and then try to make plays in the offense. We're used to seeing Drew Brees take every snap, but you never know, and that's the good thing about Bridgewater, because he showed that cerebral side there just in a preseason game, being efficient, high completion rate, exactly what the offense requires, and you know there's much more there if called upon to be able to have a game plan and work with the Mike Thomases and Jared Cooks of the world. He started in the league, he's won double-digit games, he's gone to a Pro Bowl. He hasn't been dynamic in the NFL when he was healthy and did it, but he was a winner, and I think he commands the huddle in the locker room. There has to be a lot of respect for Bridgewater. Most teams don't have that in a backup quarterback.
Rene, you mentioned your word about the depth at linebacker. A lot of conjecture this and conversation this week about where's the pass rush going to come from outside of Cam Jordan. I know you like Davenport. What are your thoughts there? Can't base it on preseason game one, but a lot of people are concerned.
I really like what Trey Hendrickson has done. We visited a little bit in OTAs and minicamp. I've watched him. He's had a couple of fights. He's got some fire about him. He plays with a lot of passion. Marcus Davenport, depending on the days, I think he was thinking too much about it last year. He got away with some things in college that he's not going to get away with this level. And I think he was making it more difficult, just trying to outthink his opponent. I think you just want him to relax and play. And once he buys into that, he'll be fine. Trey Hendrickson is a guy I think is going to take a big step in his third year. A guy that I talked to yesterday could be a dark horse. Porter Justin, kid from Southern Cal, 6'5", 260. Have a story on him. He's a guy who doesn't drink carbonated drinks, doesn't take sugar. And his dad offered him $500 to take a bite out of a dessert, and he turned it down. I mean, he's one of those kind of guys. He looks like, he rolls the shirt up, and you can show his abs, and he rolls the pants up, and I mean, but he plays with fire, and they got him playing with his hand in the dirt. Which is a different way he was at Southern Cal.
Right.
I think he's going to be a guy to look at.
First off, I need to call my dad, because that sounds like a pretty good deal. I'll take that $500.
Yeah, guess what? I would lose.
But the interesting thing about when you think of Trey Hendrickson and Marcus Davenport, these are two guys that came out of Conference USA. There's a lot of similarities in the fact that they were dominant players on their level, okay? And they were asked to do different things. They stood up in a two-point stance, moved around because they were such great athletes and matchup problems on that level. So coming to the NFL, they're having to learn how to play the defensive end position in a four-man front the way it needs to be played. So both have had a learning curve. And for Hendrickson in particular, he's had issues with run defense, not so much being able to get to the passer. He has a natural talent for that. Can he play every down if they ask him to? Can he fill in as that third guy like Alex Okafor was as the third guy last year? So he's got all the opportunity in the world and should be able to step up to do it. Davenport actually showed to be a pretty good run stopper early on in containing on the edge. It's a matter of, can he continue to develop his pass rush skills, turn physical ability into that ability to actually get to the quarterback. That's going to be a work in progress. So that does make you feel uncomfortable knowing that these players can still be described as somewhat raw when they're two of your top three. And I'm glad you've been talking to Gustin. And I really thought he was a standout player in college, and it's only because of injuries that he wasn't drafted, and perhaps a second-day pick type of talent. He is somebody who was asked to do a lot on the college level, played at a Power 5 conference, and showed that he could stay on the field for 3 downs and do different duties that you ask of a guy. You're not looking for a superstar to fill in when you talk about a backup at that point, but can he play all 3 downs if you need him to and play different roles? Gustin, if he stays healthy, wouldn't be a surprise at all if he made the team.
I totally agree. Tonight, Jude Young and Rene Nadeau, CrestCitySports.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Quick word from our underwriters, and we'll be right back.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amena, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Jude Young and Rene Nadeau of CrescentCitySports.com. We move on to the announcement of the Superdome renovations. We got that word from Jeff Duncan, then of the Times-Picayune, now The Athletic, who did a great in-depth article a few weeks ago. Actually, it was in May. And pretty much what he wrote is what's come to fruition. The state and LSCD and also the Saints will now split the cost of Superdome renovations. It's about $450 million. The LSCD through hotel motel tax money will put up about $207 million. The Saints will put up $150 million, and the state will come up with about $93 million on the new Superdome renovations. As part of this, the Saints are willing to be able to sign a 15-year extension with the possibility of an option for another 15-year extension, which will keep the Saints here for 30 more years after their lease is up in 2025. Really great news for that iconic building, the Dome. Would have cost about $1.8 billion to build a new stadium, and they continue to modernize that building. And this particular modernization is about the fans, opening up the concourses, making it more fan-friendly. And of course, that's in anticipation of the Superdome, hosting the Super Bowl Final Fours, and also the NCAA football championship as well.
And it's important to note that it's more than just the fans about football games. It's about hosting events in the Dome year-round, and that's why you're seeing the hotel restaurant tax being involved there. It's coming from different revenue sources, and the Saints are kicking in a third because it's so important to their product. So that's a pretty fair deal for the needs of this economy.
Agreed.
So you have to like what you're hearing, and you have to be grateful that Dave Dixon's great vision way back when was such a big one, that you have this huge footprint to work with, that you continue to be able to have the space to make moves and modernize the facility. So you don't have to build a new one. It's in the perfect location, easy to get to, right in downtown by the quarter. Everything about the Superdome is one of the few things we got right in a big investment over the decades here, because it's still paying off and it's still worth investing in, knowing you're going to get your money back and the whole community is going to benefit.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know, the two things, in front of the camera and just talking yesterday, I really got the impression Governor Edwards was very, very adamant about with that 30-year, 15 years, another 15 years to keep them here, and said it numerous times. Also, with the relationship that Tom Benson and Gail Benson has with the NFL, most teams, when they build a new stadium, they're going to be getting the Super Bowl. You wonder how much this is going to play into that with the NFL, with the renovations and what they're doing and moving forward and making the type of big splash and renovations that they are. How much of a role that will play in maybe securing a Super Bowl in the foreseeable future, another one, you know, because of the relationship, again, the relationship and showing that we're not getting a new stadium, but it's going to be brand new.
I don't want to dive too deep in this, guys, but again, look, I got a lot of flack on social media when I posted the story when it first came out. I think people in the city have to understand, yes, the city's infrastructure is failing, but again, this city now has chosen the path of being a tourist destination where tourism is the driver for the economy here in New Orleans, and really in the state of Louisiana as well. Well, I believe it's in the top 5 of the state of Louisiana in terms of economic drivers. That dome has to continually be modernized in order for us to get these big-time events. Those big-time events are some of the reasons why, again, you see people coming from around the world to New Orleans. You can say, oh, well, the people are coming anyway. Yeah, they are. the natural charm of New Orleans, the French Quarter, etc., the walkability of New Orleans, it's not enough anymore to land these big games. It's an arms race when you start talking about new stadiums. And look, you got to give a lot of credit to the powers that be that are trying to continue to upgrade the Superdome and modernize it. The money that's going to be generated by that dome ultimately will help pay part of the infrastructure rebuild here in the city. Right now, the hotel motel tax, a portion of that is going to the infrastructure rebuild. So again, that's something that kind of goes hand in hand.
Right, and if you're angry about what's wrong with the city, what's wrong with the failing streets, the untrustworthy drainage, the lack of diversity in our economy. That has nothing to do with the Superdome and the New Orleans Saints, because they're doing their part, and that's an investment that when you put money into it, you're seeing where it comes back. That's very rare around here. So again, I'm not a cheerleader running around for government spending here, but in this case, when you know where the money's going, you know the local economy needs it, and you know the benefit is going to come back, it's guaranteed. You very rarely have that sort of guaranteed investment from a tax and government account sort of angle. It's unfortunately entirely too rare in this state.
And the majority of the money is coming from the hotel motel tax, which is paid by tourists for the most part.
Yeah, and I can't add much more except to say that this is the right decision in the right direction. It's addressing a need that certainly not only helps the city but the state as well. And the image of the state of Louisiana, and it'll certainly have a big hand in bringing big events in the future.
Right, and guaranteeing you keep something like an Essence Fest in the middle of the summer when it's hot. The Dome has to be able to compete with other facilities around the country because they're always trying to woo events that bring tourists, especially during off times of the year. And
also, again, Fletcher Mackel asked the question, you were there, Rene, yesterday, about what's going to happen with the arena down the line. Now, John Bell Edwards was not committing on the renovation of the arena, but it's going to happen, and he pretty much almost said it was going to happen eventually, which would kind of segue into the Pelicans. The schedule was released. Projected to be one of the fifth toughest schedule in all of the NBA. But for the first time in franchise history, 30 nationally televised games, including 2 on ABC, but none in the final 17. So again, the networks are betting that everybody's going to have Zion fever early, but the Pelicans are going to a swoon late and won't be in playoff contention. They opened the season versus 15 of the top 20 teams from last year that played in the playoffs. And while 7 of their last 20 are against participants in the playoffs last year, so a very top-heavy schedule as well.
Right, and we've seen that a lot in the past, but I think it's just the product of being in the Western Conference. You're going to play difficult teams early if you're playing in your conference, and that's been consistent for the Pelicans over the years. Make no mistake about it, 30 national TV games, including 20 on the major TV partners. That's because of Zion Williamson. They're betting on his effect from Duke last year on the ratings carrying over, and it probably will. And guess what? There's also flexibility later in the season. If the Pelicans are contending for a playoff spot and the ratings are good for Zion, they could move into more TV games, just like, unfortunately, in recent years, we've seen them move out of TV games.
Last year, the Anthony Davis debacle,
Right. So, again, looking at it, the schedule is tough because the conference is tough. You like that spotlight. It's going to look big for the franchise as far as not just Zion Williamson, but what David Griffin has built being shown across the country, and it's going to help take away some of that small market can't win stigma if this team is exciting and competitive early on. And considering the amount of talent, the depth of the talent, which is new for this franchise, to be able to have that much talent to play a high-paced, exciting game, I think they're going to be competitive and fun to watch and help change that viewpoint of what the Pelicans are and, more importantly, what they can be.
Your thoughts, Rene?
Well, 3 of the first 5 games, Toronto, Golden State, and Houston. But 3 of the 5 games are at home. But, besides the opening game here, I'm not sure the date, November 27th, Wednesday before Thanksgiving, AD comes home, and boy, I tell you, there's going to be a long line to getting that game, so that's going to be very interesting. The night before Thanksgiving, I think it'll be a packed house.
And I think and for myself, I'll say this. I had my issues with Tom Benson, the way he handled negotiations, the way some of the things went down after Katrina. Gail Benson has been a breath of fresh air. She has been incredible. From her conversation with the media and saying, I'm a caretaker for the franchise for the city of New Orleans. I may be the owner, but the franchise belongs to the city. To what she's done, the simple things like, again, covering the bleachers for the fans out at Saints Camp with fans, to again what we're seeing now, negotiations that were not contentious to be able to again have the at least extended. She's not sitting there banging the drum saying I need a new arena for the Pelicans. She's going to allow this to kind of flow, and there just seems to be a different vibe coming out of Airline Drive now.
And the thing is, she is the only female who is a primary owner for two major franchises, the Pelicans and the Saints. She's the only one, is a primary owner. And, you know, when you talk to somebody like David Griffin who just arrived, and he'll tell you how much she's on board, you know, why he took the job and everything else. I mean, you can tell that she has convinced him whatever it takes to get this team winning. And listen to somebody like David Griffin, who has been around the league, and how he always mentions how much passion she has for the Pelicans, and that's certainly sold him. I think it you know, reverberates throughout the entire franchise.
You know, we didn't know what type of owner she was going to be. I mean, people would ask me, nobody knew what type of owner she's going to be. You know, from as Rene just mentioned, from the David Griffin hiring to how she handled the Anthony Davis situation to again what we're seeing now, just the little things she's doing for the fans. I mean, home run every time she stepped up to the podium.
Well, when it comes down to it, we didn't know how big of a fan she was of having a winning product. We know now on the Pelicans side, she could have just taken over these two franchises and gone with the status quo, because on the NBA side, it isn't George Shinn era. There's so much money from TV rights alone that everybody's making money in the NBA, and it could have carried on. And she obviously is a New Orleanian for life, not looking to move the team, and would have been more than happy to make a little bit of profit here while the Saints, if it ain't broke, don't fix it at this point. But she's much more interested in investing in that product and in that franchise. That's how she got David Griffin. Instead of interviewing candidates and going with maybe, well, we talked about it on the show, I thought, let's go with a younger guy, not thinking that they were going to put that much money into change. Instead, the most accomplished candidate came in and said, you need to change this, you need to increase this staff, you got to spend a lot more money, or I'm certainly not taking the job. She said, well, he's got an NBA championship ring, he's got credentials, he's clearly the best candidate, he must be right, because I want to win, I'm going to invest in him. And you're going to see the benefit both short and long term, not only being able to put together competitive teams, but keep them together. There won't be as many issues. And you can talk about Dell Demps just from a talent evaluator, but you also have to deal with guys weren't staying healthy. Why? Because you weren't keeping up with the Joneses and the conditioning, the 365, the 82-game schedule, the wear and tear for these guys. That shouldn't be a problem anymore with the investment of Aaron Nelson on that side. But she's putting a lot more money, including $5+ million, into a relatively already new facility to make it even better for the players and coaches to do their job. So she doesn't have to do this. The fact that she's doing it tells you that she's genuine when she talks about being a caretaker. And beyond that, investing in the product so that the community can be proud.
I have to say, nobody knew who she was going to be or what type of owner she was going to be, but I think we're blessed to have her. I got to say, no doubt about it. Let's switch to LSU. I want to take you first, Rene. Camp injuries, okay? And you go through this all the time, and some people get really, really upset and excited about camp injuries. Right now, pretty much everybody's come back to practice with the exception of Delpit and Chasson. You know, look, to me, if they're really injured, we don't need to see them till Texas, right? At this point. But what are your thoughts?
First of all, I have a lot of faith and confidence in Tommy Moffitt. What he does with the weight training and off-season conditioning, they know where they are. The coaching staff knows where these players who have been missing practice, where they are, and when they can be coming around. I think in many ways Ed Orgeron doesn't want to show his hand, and he's taking a look at some other people and all, but you know, the media is not out there all the time for all the practice too.
If only like first 15 minutes,
exactly.
That's it.
So what you see is not the entire practice. So there may be other things going on behind closed doors. He doesn't have to tell you if he don't want to, and as he tells you, he's telling the other teams he's showing his hands.
That's right.
So he's got a handle on things, and people thinking, I know around the city, how can this many people been players hurt this soon? They're not all hurt, really. It's just he's got a method to his madness.
Right.
It's what you just said, the fact that the media has such limited access, which is smart on the college level to keep your hand close to the vest, right? What we're seeing is the media most notice in the little time they have available to look at the team is who's dressed out and who isn't.
Right.
So they're going to focus on that because they can't focus on what we have every day, virtually every Saints practice. They can't see it. So don't overreact to that. Again, you'll know before the season who they have available. You'll know from scrimmage statistics. You'll get more information information as we get closer. And again, you may not even see everybody. They're going to be, I think, pretty safe playing a Georgia Southern team that could have been more dangerous, but they lost their starting quarterback to an off-the-field issue. It is all about Texas. They're going to be relatively healthy because the coaching staff isn't going to take any chances. They pretty much know who their top players are on both sides of the ball. They're still trying to figure out depth, just like every football team this time of year, but everybody's going to overreact. It's LSU. Are they finally going to be a national contender? Are they going to turn number 6 preseason into a college football playoff spot?
Yes.
Everybody's getting shaky. Calm down. It's just August.
Guys, let's talk a little bit about the offense, because that's the big question mark going into this. And that Ogeron, as you mentioned, keeping it close to the vest. You know, my guess is that, you know, they'd like to be able to keep 5 linemen in, not like what happened with Foster Moreau last year, where he had to continually block. We'll see short passes. We'll see the ball out quick. We'll see a lot of concepts that the Saints use within the Tiger offense, but it won't be the Saints offense. Your thoughts?
And you know, you and I have talked about this a few months ago during spring practice. They're going to do little things and play with the mind of the defense. Example, you're going to see sometimes 5 wide receivers in, empty backfield. You may see Clyde Edwards-Helaire as an example, because he's a complete back. He's the best back they have right now. You're going to see him maybe split out a little bit. They're going to do things like a normal split for an offensive lineman is 2 to 2.5 feet. Sometimes they're going to break the huddle and come out 4-foot splits or maybe wider. And when that happens, you're playing with the mind of the defense. Or, you know, the defense will, the first reaction is, are they inviting me to come into this gap, this wide gap, and why are they doing that? It makes you stop to think, and they may go from a 4-foot gap back to 2.5, just things like that. They know what they're doing, but that 1.5 feet and just little things, it's playing with the mind, and it'll buy you some time on a certain play, because as the defense is thinking about what you're trying to do, they're not worried about other things. Joe Burrow, man, a year ago, you know, he just gotten here. He didn't know all the players in the huddle with him. I think that's tremendously a tremendous advantage, and I think they do have more depth on the offensive line. You know, you got maybe one of the better receiving cores in the SEC with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall. I'm telling you, watch out for what this kid can do tonight. He's healthy. He is a A.J. Green type of guy. I compare him to a Michael Clayton, Terrace Marshall, and I think that's what he can be, who was a #1 draft choice of the Buccaneers. This offense can do a lot of things. They also they want to snap the ball within 18 seconds of the previous play. So they want to move fast. It does not allow the defense to make changes and adjust. And then if you're doing these other little things with the wide splits, it's just, again, it's going to just play with the mind of the defense and buy you some time. And if it means a completed pass because the defense is trying to make adjustments to you quickly, they've competed and they've done what they wanted to do.
We've heard so much about Joe Brady coming over. I mean, I got to be honest with you guys. I didn't know who Joe Brady was in New Orleans, but supposedly, and again, he's the next great things in sliced bread. Your thoughts on how this LSU offense will look?
Well, the first thing is people overreact too much to the fact that he's coming directly over from the Saints, which is how Ed Ogeron and his staff.
You really have to go back one more, right?
Yeah, it's the Penn State connection, and then Joe Moorhead, who's now the head coach at Mississippi State. This is about making it a more modern college offense. Sure, Brady picked up some pro concepts. You're working with Drew Brees and Sean Payton and company, but it's all about his ability to be able to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly and get the ball to those playmakers, and maybe mitigate the greatest, I think, weakness on the team, which is still the overall talent and depth at the tackle spot. You're not going to ask Joe Burrow to have to hang in there in the pocket and make things happen, because you're going to utilize getting the ball to your talent in space. And whether you're an NFL offense with the Saints that does it mostly under center, or most college offenses now working out of the shotgun, you're trying to get the ball quickly to players with mismatches. If you play with pace, if you play with tempo, which we'll get to Tulane, that's what they're looking to do as well. You're trying to get to the line quickly and try to get mismatches and keep defenses from being able to make substitutions, take advantage of your versatile players. And when you have a game plan of, okay, this is a player we want to exploit in the slot here, or if we get a one-on-one matchup on the outside, that's what this is all about. And that's a younger coach under 30 helping an older Steve Ensminger understand those newer concepts, because he's been much more exposed to them. And that combination sounds like it's working really well, because you can hear the confidence from Joe Burrow that he's getting it, and therefore the rest of the offense understands what they're trying to do.
LSU, everybody's raving about this defense on all levels. Your thoughts?
Oh, man, you got a #1 draft choice, top 5 pick in Grant Delpit. Christian Fulton could be a #1 draft choice.
Stingley's a future #1 draft choice, right?
Stingley's a future #1 draft choice. And you know, I'm gonna tell you, a Jacob Phillips if he has a good year, could sneak into the first round because of his size. And I'm saying if he has a good year, 100 tackles, gets to the Senior Bowl or gets into a postseason kind of thing. And Divinity, could he? I'm not saying he'll be a number 1 draft choice, but he's the kind of guy can get you 100 tackles, playing inside or outside. And when you put him on the outside with Chasson, that is the best rush combo you have. I mean, those two, and you're going to have Divinity in the middle sometimes. The best down lineman you have right now is Fehoko, Glenn Logan, and Rashard Lawrence. That's your best 3 guys. I know Tyler Shelvin and Apu are guys in the nose tackle, but really, your best nose tackle right now, your best 3, Fehoko in the nose, and get Glenn Logan and Rashard on the outside with him. And Caleb Chasson, he's a number 1 draft choice. If he's back to where he was prior to the injury, and they're saying he is, he's going to be unblockable. He's a guy that can put up 12 to 15 sacks this year.
And that's about the excitement level that Ed Orgeron has, because I think that's why he said publicly that he wants to, quote unquote, have 4 down linemen more often. I think he means he wants to have 4 players down at the line of scrimmage, because Divinity had to step up last year when Chasson was hurt and showed that he can be a dynamic pass rusher. Maybe on a lot of passing downs, you will see those 2 on the edge with the best matchup, D lineman, big lineman inside. I think he just wants to get away from what we saw that really hurt, for example, I think in the Texas A&M game. They didn't trust the ability, and especially when you went into deeper overtimes, of the down lineman to be able to get to the quarterback. So even playing all red zone defense, what was happening? They were dropping 8.
Right.
That's not LSU football. They've got the personnel now, and if they stay relatively healthy, they can keep guys fresh and play with 4 down linemen. And when LSU defenses are at their best, and Rene's seen it because they recruit so well, they can unleash 4 linemen and let the athletes behind them match up and make plays and not have to blitz as much, so that when they do blitz, it has a great impact with guys like Delpit, who are playmakers. He may not be the type of playmaker that Tyrann Mathieu was as a blitzer, but he made some big plays last year. And now when he's used in that role, he could be even more dynamic because they won't see it coming, because they won't need to do it as much.
Guys, it's hard. Normally you don't talk about a kicker, right? But at LSU, when you look at Cole Tracy last year, who was a godsend, before that, it was hiccup after hiccup. We heard from the scrimmage over the weekend, Cade York, 8 of 10 in terms of field goals, 51-yard field goal. We're hearing he's got a very, very strong leg, stronger leg than what Cole Tracy had.
And all the camps he's been at, he has come away with, and these really camps, good camps around the country, get the best kickers from coast to coast. He graded very, very high and won some competition in some of these kicking camps. So he's got the strong leg. It's above the shoulders with a kicker.
Yes.
How they can block everything else out and stuff, and you won't know that until he is between the white stripes. But so far York has shown a stronger leg, and it's not about the leg. It's between the ears with a kicker.
And the funny thing about it is you're hoping you're asking Culp to do more as far as being able to knock those 40-plus yard field goals when you're in that situation than constantly having to settle for field goals in the red zone. That's part of the idea of hopefully seeing an improved offense that can take advantage of those matchups, those big wide receivers who should be able to make plays that turn drives into the red zone into more touchdowns this year. So can Culp come up clutch, though, in the end? It's going to be a game or two where he has to make a big kick in the fourth quarter that's going to make the difference between being a national title contender or not. Having the talent is one thing, like Rene said, but when it's all on the line, you make the big kick. But at least LSU is bringing in talented kicker options, and Culp being the number 1
And that's
guy.
what Cole Tracy could do last year.
Right.
He could block it out, and of course he was nails when it was necessary. Talk to me about Will Hall's offense, because we keep hearing a lot about this new offense with Tulane and how it's going to look. Justin McMillan and him, from what we understand, that they are inseparable. Your thoughts?
It's all about tempo. It's all about playing faster. And the funny thing is, you look at Tulane's statistics last year. They struggled on the offensive line, and they have 3 new starters again this year. But they also want to have the ability to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands faster. Darnell Mooney was a big-time playmaker, and he finished the season incredibly when they had to win games. He had a monster finish to his 2018. But the thing is, they need to have an offense and have receivers led by Jalen McCleskey, because he did it at a Power 5 at Oklahoma State, where they can get the ball to the quarterback's hands quickly and have that quick passing game to complement what should be, again, a very good running game and hopefully more consistent because, again, Tulane will play faster. They want to be on the football quickly just like LSU will. You have to play that way nowadays so you can have mismatches and keep the defense on its toes. So you saw these two changes different because you've got a brand new coordinator in Hall who had a good year at ULL, but was at 2 Division II schools in the Gulf South Conference, which was really good, and had dynamic offenses. And now he has experience in the conference, even though he was just a tight ends coach. If Tulane can replicate what Memphis has done, because in the end they were able to have a first-round pick quarterback in Paxton Lynch, but every year they are a power-running football team. So they are diverse, they are balanced, and that's Willie Fritz admitting, the zone read and being more option-oriented, it's not going to work, particularly, at this level. If you think you're the group of 6 or Power 6 at this point in the American, these teams are more talented. Your UCFs, your Houstons. If you're going to beat those teams, you've got to score points, and that's Tulane trying to take that next step.
Rene, would you take the defense for us and talk about this Tulane defense?
This defensive line is among the top 25 in the country. Patrick Johnson is an NFL guy, number 7. Now he's a guy that the offense has to know where he is. The secondary is better, and by having a defense, and Coach Curtis does a great job. Jack Curtis does a great job with that defense. It's going to help the offense because they will create turnovers. They'll force the other team into a punting situation. Turnover when they flip the field, the offense will have better opportunities and not have as far to travel for scores. So that defense, the improvement of the defense is in the long range help the offense. But I keep going back to Patrick Johnson, and that front 4 is rated in the best in the conference for sure, and among the best 20-25. Potentially what they can do. The defensive secondary, I think, is going to be a lot better than they were last year, and you got a lot of experience coming back. And I'm going to tell you, Will Hall is bringing to Tulane what Joe Brady's doing, bringing to the Saints. You got great running backs. You got Corey Dolphin is a sprinter. You got Bradwell over 1,100 yards. You got Corey Dolphin. You got Tyjae Spears is a kid from Ponchatoula, played for Hank Tierney. He's a guy who's a speed guy, he's a 3rd down guy. Cam Carroll. Who else? Stephon Hutchinson is a guy. So you got 4 or 5. This is one of the best talented backfields in the conference. He's got a lot of options he can go to and keep a fresh back there. And so I tell you, Willie Fritz is excited about this backfield.
We got 2.5 minutes left, guys. I'd like you both to kind of talk a bit about the top teams in the state outside of LSU and Tulane that we can look for. I guess we start with Nichols, right?
Yeah, Nichols, and you got Sully Lunch, 25.5 sacks for his career. He's an All-American, preseason All-American. Chase Forcade, most valuable player in the conference last year. I think Southeastern's going to be better. Chase and Virgil, as a quarterback, came from Fresno State to Southeastern. Southeastern has one of the better wide receiver cores. Juwan Petit-Ferrer is an All-American return guy and wide receiver. They have good receivers. Northwestern, Shelton Epler is a quarterback. Jared West is a running back from Brother Martin, who is a leading running back. He had 800-something yards last year. Northwestern's going to be much improved. McNeese with a new coach. Cody Orgeron is the starting quarterback as a junior. And they got Chris Livings is an outside rush guy for McNeese, is one of the better pass rushers in the conference. Overall, top to bottom, Louisiana Tech, Jamar Smith, is a really in his 2nd year as a quarterback. He's got a wide receiver, Adrian Hardy, 1,100 something yards receiving last year, 75 catches, and they got Jaquaz Dancy and Israel Tucker is a running back at a Rumble, will be the 2 running backs for Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech should be much improved over last year as well.
You got a minute left. Your thoughts?
Just real quickly on the Southland, because that's where your greatest hopes are with Nichols, ranked 12th this year. So much progress under Tim Rebow to become an FCS power at this point, favorite to win the league. Interesting part of their schedule is they've got 2 opportunities to knock off FBS schools, starting with Kansas State, who may be vulnerable, even more vulnerable in their matchup with Texas State. But it's about, can they go to Sam Houston and beat them again this year? That's probably where the conference comes down to. And you mentioned what Selfo's done at Southeastern. They were inconsistent last year, but they should have beaten ULM early in the season. They beat Lamar, who went to the FCS playoffs, and they had their returning quarterback, Virgil, 3,000 yards last year. He's only going to be better, and Selfo's offense will be improved, and that defense with Lance Guidry, he's been great as a defensive coach, didn't succeed at McNeese as a head coach. The Lions will be better defensively because Guidry knows how to win in that league on that side of the ball.
Guys, I've said it. I've said on this show. I've said on this show. This could be one of those special years in sports here in South Louisiana and across Louisiana, from what's going on the college level to the Saints to the Pelicans, and then we get into again college basketball. What's going to happen in college baseball? This could be one of those special years.
No doubt.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Rene, Nadeau, Jude Young, CrescentCitySports.com. Thanks so much for being with us tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. You can also catch us, Pelican Sports Television, 9 o'clock every Friday night as well. You can watch the show at your leisure at our YouTube channel, also at ericasher.com, where you can check out all the previous episodes. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeartRadio app. That is weekdays noon to 2. Listen live. Again, download the podcast at ericasher.com. As I mentioned before, all the previous episodes of this program can also be seen at ericasher.com as well. I want to thank our guests tonight, again, Jude Young and Rene Nadeau. Make sure you're checking out CrescentCitySports.com. It's got to be your go-to place for sports here in New Orleans. Fantastic writers, something new every single day. It's one of my go-to spots. Make it yours. And of course, want to thank our friends here at WLAE-TV, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.